So as you know, you've seen the CX-centric framework before, and really the key part of this framework, the real basis is really going from data to actionable insights. And what's important about this is to be able to communicate these actionable insights so that you can gain buy-in for your CX initiatives. And the way to do that is through storytelling. So what I'd like to do is introduce Keith Kmett, who's going to be our keynote speaker for today. 20 years within customer experience and user experience design. He's a master storyteller, passionate about inclusion and equality, a customer journey enthusiast, bilingual, speaking English and Spanish. And on top of that, he has very good design skills.
CX-centric conversation.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thanks for joining us today, and really excited and happy to share. Appreciate the introduction there, Jonathan, and Frederick as well. A great point around empathizing and making sure that we have connection to the stories we tell. We'll talk more about that here as we go, and so I'll just dive right in. If you do have questions, please put them in the chat, and we'll try to get to them as we go. So the art and science of storytelling. We'll kick it off first. I work at Principal Financial, and I wanted to just introduce everybody to the company here. Just a couple slides. So we have over 24 million customers worldwide. We're in just over 25 countries, and we're about 17,000 employees worldwide. Great place to work. I've been there about 9 years, and I've had the opportunity to work in Chile, Mexico, Brazil, and in the US, but work with countries all over the world. And, with the kind of services we offer, it's kind of a broad range. We offer retirement and income solutions. We also focus around insurance solutions within the US, and then also do global asset management. So big wide range of services for finances we offer to customers and businesses.
CX-centric conversation.
So we'll dive into storytelling, what everybody's here for, and super excited to share with you some adapted frameworks from other companies, but show you how to practically put them into play. And so first I'll kick off by just saying, so half the conversations we have as humans are going to tell stories. The other half is going to be like either telling other people just commands or other pieces, but storytelling is just ingrained in who we are as human beings. So every one of us is capable of telling a story. Just some of us are really, really keen on making sure, as Frederick pointed out, making sure other people can see themselves in the story. And those are some of the techniques that really become part of that art and not just the science of storytelling. The one myth around storytelling is some people think that you have to have this beautiful brain of being both creative and logistic and being able to bring together. One of the big things that right now is really hot in the market right now is data interpretation, and people who can take data and turn it into wonderful stories. And everybody thinks that they have this brain, but the reality is you don't have to have this type of brain to be a great storyteller. You actually just have to be a great collaborator. So some of the best storytellers have never just, nobody's ever sit down and just written a novel without getting feedback or some type of collaboration with others to refine their story, to enhance their story, right? Some of the best authors you ever know always said, hey, what do you think of this? Take a look at it, and had some type of editing happen, which involves that collaboration. So don't think that you have to do storytelling all alone, but you do have to find a trusted group that would collaborate with you and give you feedback on your story as you go along. So why use storytelling? Like what's in it for you or even your business if you do storytelling? So what some common uses are, stories really sell. They can sell an idea. They can help people provide relevance and context to what's going around that story, and they really help drive action. And I really like this slide a lot because a lot of people think that you have to build a strategy and then tell the story to get to where you want to go. And I would argue that you actually should build a really strong story that actually helps you communicate your strategy to success. Because a lot of times we've built strategies, but they're not built around a story, and that story gets lost. So a lot of times the strategies that we think are really amazing never really turn out the way we thought they would. And it's part of that's just around that communication of how we told that story.
Magnus?
So storytelling can really help with you as a company. It can help you get that competitive advantage. If you're in advertising or marketing, you know the importance of storytelling and helping build your brand. It can help with that customer experience. In my role, if I didn't use storytelling, I would never get a project inserted into the prioritization process. The other thing that it really does is help us. It can help you grow your career personally as you become a stronger storyteller to really help refine your skills to the point where you're finally teaching other people on how to do storytelling really well. So I actually took a course with IDEO and storytelling course, and they taught us 4 simple steps, and I'm just going to cover those 4 simple steps in story building. And these steps should hopefully help you really build your idea and build your story. And so this will kind of be the framework, hopefully, that you can use as a takeaway of this keynote today that can help you out. So step number 1 is really around finding your story. It's really about saying, what are the stories that are interesting to you that you think need to be told? Sometimes we have a lot of stories. Sometimes we only have one story in mind. But sometimes you have to really say, is there enough data or enough information for me to build a strong, compelling story? So finding your story sometimes seems straightforward, but sometimes you have to go back to this step once you do some of the other steps. You do have to figure out what's the point. You have to be able to communicate, like, why would I be telling this story? What's it gonna lead to? And kind of envision that as you're framing up what your story is. As I mentioned earlier, the collaboration is a key piece of it. IDEO called it the bar test because I think in a COVID world, I know we all can't go to the bar or the pub, we can't go to the cafes, but typically the idea is that you would try sharing that story before you've ever written it down or built a type of presentation. You could just go tell that story to friends over coffee and really get their opinions on if you found the right story or a story that will compel people. The next step is putting pen to paper. Take that story, that idea that you have, and start writing down that brief. So putting that pen to paper really helps you outline that idea better. When you're writing your brief, this is where you want to get as specific as possible about your audience. You need to make the story about what they care about. You need to understand what they care about. And then you also just need to make sure that if you take what they're caring about, how does that turn into what you're trying to achieve? Is there a natural roadblock? Are they going to be immediately saying, no, there's no way we'll do this because of what they care about? And, how can you resolve that conflict telling your story? So the third step is then finding that one idea, that one compelling idea that you're going to drive out of your story. What you find is when you're considering your one idea, this helps you keep concise and helps you focus on what you really want that audience to take away. What do you want them to remember? If it's one thing. So sometimes you'll have multiple ideas that you share within the story. But in the end, what's the one thing you want them to act on or remember walking out from that? You don't want them just to remember, hey, they told a great story. I think, Frederick, even in your example, you were able to say, hey, it talks about this specific idea, right? And that's the idea that hopefully the storyteller intended you to remember. So if you deliver that story to different audiences, your idea may have different offshoots, and that's okay. Can they come back to that one central story? That's a key part of storytelling. The last step is actually just choosing your medium. So sometimes you think, well, we don't have to give that much thought. You know, in the business world, we just do a lot of PowerPoints. But sometimes you actually need to break up your medium and not just do a PowerPoint. Today I did a PowerPoint, clearly, to reach this broad audience. But sometimes video, sometimes it's just an email, sometimes it's just having that conversation. Maybe you didn't actually have to build a presentation, but you just had to have a conversation, but you knew your talking points, you'd written them down. With an email, for example, I had a good example where I just needed to get approval to go ahead and do some user testing. So I really just, I didn't want to do a big presentation or anything, but I needed user testing for a project so that we could show how people are going to interact with what we were building. And so I just wrote a short email, but I made sure to emphasize what the challenge was that we're trying to resolve and why we only needed $500 to do the user testing. And so I needed a budget approval, but I also needed them to feel compelled, like that we had to have this testing. So my one focus idea was, can we make sure we get the testing? Getting the funding was kind of the secondary idea. But luckily the VP that I had written to did see the value in testing with those customers and gave us the approval for the budget. So it can be as simple as just doing a short story in the email. So Keith, you're probably all wondering, hey, will you show us an example? Give us a good example of storytelling. So yeah, once upon a time is, no, well, I'll just stop and think. I think we're too young for the fairy tale stories. I'm gonna give you a real business story that I told probably 4 years ago now at Principal, and it was with this challenge. So I had my CMO come to me and say, Keith, we need to get funding for our marketing automation efforts and for the platform. So resources and platform, we need to get funding for that. She said, you got 2 weeks, figure it out. And I was like, okay. Thoughts, I'm taking a poll here really quick, but what would you do? Just rhetorical question, you don't have to answer, but you know, in your mind, you've got 2 weeks, you've got millions of dollars that you have to try to secure from funding that a lot of other people fight over to try to get that funding. So what story are you going to tell in order to get this funding? Well, here's the story I used. I said, I presented to I knew who my audience was. I knew it was a committee of both technology and business people. So I introduced them first to Rachel. I said, this is Rachel, late 20s, single, been in the working in the workforce for a little time and has some basic financial services and plans in her life. Nothing too great, but this is Rachel. And what I did was told this story about Rachel here. And so I explained that Rachel is just moving up. She's actually just got a new job and decided and taking that job in Denver. So she's actually on Facebook telling everybody about her great news. She's just excited. She's leaving Indianapolis and going to in Indiana and going to Colorado and Denver. And what we're able to do is see that and offer her an advertisement, right? A marketing way. And she sees that, oh, everything about rolling over from your old job, I'm probably going to need to do something like that after being in her job for 7 years. So she decides to engage with that and submits that. And so as she submits that, she actually sees a personalized email connecting her and offering to connect her to a financial service advisor or financial representative. So that financial representative could assist her in helping with the process of doing that, moving the money and making sure she takes care of her financial services. On the right-hand side, you can see if you're a technology person at all, I'm actually listing kind of some of the technologies and capabilities that we need to have in order to make these moments happen. So as Rachel continues down her story, she, clicks a few more things, gives us a little bit more detail, and behind the scenes, we're building that 360 view of Rachel. We're starting to gather more information about who she is and what she's told us about her and what she's given of her information to us about, so that we're able to continue personalizing even more the communications with her. So we actually match her even better with a better financial representative, Daniel. But, time goes by, she gets moving, she gets busy, kind of forgets about this. So later on, we continue to just nurture her and send her occasional emails. And finally, it kind of brings her back to that moment of, I'm ready to see what to do with my money from my previous job. And so, but instead of just, accepting the email, she decides to actually Google and say, who are the best 401k funds to roll over with? And luckily, she finds Principal as one of the top plans as well. So it keeps coming up, and so she decides to, hey, I've got an email, I'll contact Daniel, but she's kind of unsure if she wants to talk to him. So, but she does reach out to him and finally gives him a call and says, hey, here's what I'm trying to do. Daniel, as a financial representative, is able to now see Rachel from his phone even, and decides, oh, she's really trying to do this 401k rollover. That's the journey that I'm going to put her on. And he actually is just able, within a couple clicks, be able to put her on this rollover journey, which then kicks off this marketing process to walk her through the process of letting her self-serve on how to get to rolling over. So she's able to get all these invitations, sign notifications, those types of things to roll over her funds. And then in the end, Rachel's actually told us she prefers to work a lot on her mobile device. So we send her a short survey to see how things are going, how that experience was, and learn more about how we can improve. So if we back up and look at Rachel's journey here, we can see we had a lot of touch points along the way. Some of it was timing, some of it had to wait, those types of things. But in reality, if you looked at our current state, again, this is 4 or 5 years ago at Principal, but our current state at the time, we only were able to deliver basically 3 to 4 touch points. And so if we wanted that experience that Rachel had to exist for our customers, then we were going to have to, we needed the funding and resources to make all these other touch points come to life. So my question to the senior leadership and the IT CIOs was, how can we deliver this experience together? And then I presented a roadmap and a plan with my ask. So let me pause here and just say, wait, did you get caught up in my story? Hopefully it was a good story. Hopefully you could see how it connected to the business and to the customer. But did you actually see how I used that storytelling process and what worked? Did you really see what my one idea was, right? My one idea was to actually, what I wanted them to remember is, we need to deliver a new experience to our customers, something we can't do today. But that would compel them to say, so I'm responsible for doing that. I have it in my power to provide the funding and the resources. But my one idea was really about conveying what's the experience we want to deliver to our customers. So hopefully you see those steps. Like, I found that story, I wrote a brief. I can tell you I had multiple briefs that I scrapped and re-scrapped. I had probably 8 iterations before I landed on which story to tell. I did tell that one idea. That one idea was we needed to be able to explain of what would the future experience be like? Not just what we want the experience to be, but like make it real, make it something that they could really understand and feel. And then we chose, in this case, we chose to use a presentation, but we thought about making a video. With the timeline we had within 2 weeks, we didn't have time to do that, so we made an animated video. So, I think, again, I go back to even Frederick, your comments really early on. I think it just really set the tone for this, that as you're going about creating and finding your stories, just remember that this is about telling stories to other people. It's not about just telling the story because you want to tell a story. It's really about connecting with that audience and finding ways for them to compel them to action or to whatever you're trying to communicate to them with the story.
CX-centric conversation.